Who won the debate? Who were the winners? Who were the losers? Well, the biggest winner of the evening was Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio managed to show poise throughout the evening. He managed to walk the line between assertiveness and gratuitous jabs and fighting. He was the most articulate candidate. He showed the most grace under pressure. For example, when it was clear that Donald Trump didn't know what the nuclear triad was, Rubio didn't jump in and beat Trump over the head with it. He simply articulated his understanding of the nuclear triad, the capacity of the U.S. to launch nuclear strikes from either air, land, or sea, and discussed it in some detail. I was impressed by that. Further, Rubio was the only person I heard who committed to the possibility that undocumented immigrants in our country now could at some point in time achieve citizenship. I mean, that's a somewhat unacceptable position to maintain now within the Republican Party. It's really quite striking. How about the next winner? Well, that was Jeb Bush. In fact, it was somewhat heartening to see that Jeb Bush was showing some cojones in the debate. Where's it been, Jeb? Why did it take you so long? Jeb's takedown of Donald Trump was impressive and at times very articulate. The point that he made to Trump that we would never wipe out ISIS unilaterally by military action, but rather would have to do it in concert not only with our European allies, but with our Arab partners, was an important point. He went on to say that if we banned immigration from Muslims, there was no way that we could forge the kind of alliance with Arab nations that would be necessary to defeat ISIS. Trump, with all his unsophisticated bluster, never stops to think about such things. Furthermore, the fact that Bush told it like it was, that killing the family members of terrorists was a self-destructive idea not worthy of a 7th grade social studies student. So did Jeb Bush manage to save his sinking campaign? Probably not. I think it's probably too late. He's been hemorrhaging money and attention and support for probably too long now. But it was good to see him show some life and show some moxie finally in a debate, even if it took him 6 months to do it. What about the other candidates? Well, Chris Christie is hanging in there. But I persist in believing that Chris Christie, no matter how often he recites his credentials for us, still comes off more as Tony Soprano than he does Winston Churchill. I don't think Christie will ever overcome the horror of Bridgegate, which we all remember far too well. John Kasich? Well, I'm going to say something about John Kasich that sounds superficial and maybe even mean. John Kasich is too short. The Republican Party right now is intent on finding an alpha dog. It doesn't have to be a male. If they had a Margaret Thatcher standing up there, they would certainly latch on to her. But because of their hatred of the president's doggone reasonableness and intelligence, they're looking for a pit bull. That's why they've latched on to Donald Trump. And when you're as short as John Kasich is, unconsciously there's a bias against you right from the start. And I don't believe Kasich, however smart he may be, however humane he may be relative to the other candidates. In fact, humanity is sometimes a disadvantage among the Republican candidates. I don't think he will ever gain any real traction in the race. Now, if Kasich sometimes appears too warm-headed and soft and fuzzy for a Republican audience, Carly Fiorina has the opposite problem. She's just too damn chilly for people to embrace. After her breakout performance in the undercard that subsequently elevated her to the main debate some weeks ago, she's really been treading water. She can't gain any more traction herself. And that's because Carly Fiorina is a hard person to love. I would say that Carly Fiorina and Ted Cruz are possibly the two most unlikable candidates on the scene right now. And what about Ted? I don't think Ted won the back and forth with Marco Rubio about whether we needed to pare back the intelligence gathering capabilities of the NSA, or whether Rubio was correct that we needed to expand those capabilities. The two of them pretty much got into the weeds on a very complex topic, but I thought that once again the poise that Rubio showed allowed him to carry the argument. I don't have too much to say about Rand Paul because I believe that Rand Paul is so far out from the Republican mainstream that he doesn't have a chance of gaining the nomination, even though I think his dovish voice within that group is an interesting one. But he didn't particularly enhance his standing last night. Ben Carson is a sinking ship who I believe won't be around in the race for much longer. One of the things that you can count on in a Republican debate is that at some point Ben Carson will give an answer that will go on, and by the time he reaches his final sentence, you're wondering to yourself, what the hell did he just say? And did it make any sense at all? I mean, he's quite capable of standing up there and talking gibberish in foreign policy, trying to make it sound like he knows what he's talking about. It's clear to everyone that he doesn't. I think it's clear to even the most forgiving Republican audience that Ben Carson is not up to the presidency of the United States. So what about Donald? I thought Donald had a very bad night, in part because it's been quite a while since the last Republican debate. And since then, Trump has said so many stupid things that he was a sitting duck last night for anybody that was willing to stand up to him. Trump looked flustered at times. Typically, when he was asked a question, he spent the first 30 seconds telling us what a great guy he was and reminding us that he was #1 in the polls. He spent the second 30 seconds insulting whoever had challenged him on the stage. And then, as an afterthought, he would try to manage some sort of policy discussion. But Donald Trump really doesn't do policy very well. As I said earlier, when Hugh Hewitt asked him about the nuclear triad, he had no idea what that was and simply bluffed it for 30 seconds. I think in this debate, Trump looked more unsure of himself, more buffoonish, and less presidential than I think at any time in the Republican primary season. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how that affects his ratings. And one thing I might add about Trump, hearkening back to my last blog post last week, he did say, yes, I'm going to support the Republican ticket and I'm not going to run as a third-party candidate. So let's see what happens in the next Democratic debate. It seems like a year has gone by since the Democrats actually debated one another in front of a national audience. What's happened in the interim is that Bernie Sanders is hardly mentioned anymore. But I believe that there's more to be written on that score. So stay tuned. I'm Jeff Rowan. Thanks for watching.